Jibran Khan, building sleep care for the world at Sehatu, healthcare and Web3 expert. Welcome today, everybody, to the Learning with Lowell show. Here's a quick teaser from this episode.
People who run medical clinics do them in a way that either are built on systems that are outdated or don't have effective systems. And from the independent clinic world, if you are running your own medical practice, the overhead that you create when working with insurance is obscene. If someone comes to us and they snore and we're like, hey, you might have sleep apnea, we could get you a sleep apnea test that you do at home, state of the art, do it for 2 nights at your own house, in your own bed. And then we have a diagnosis like the next day. And then based off of that diagnosis, oh, hey, you have sleep apnea, get you on treatment that same week. And now your health has taken a massive turn within the span of a week. For the first 5 people who give me feedback, I'll send you $20 worth of Bitcoin.
If you want to see more content like this, like, comment, and subscribe. Let's stay curious and learn more about Jibran Khan in today's episode. And so I just wanted to quote a section of your bio and just have you explain it. because I'm sure it makes sense to you, but I'm just there's so many things that this could be. So when it said what you're really passionate about, and it makes sense, I know who you are. I think I can draw the line through it, but I'm curious. The sentence is consolidating healthcare, wellness services, and operational ingenuity. And so that's a pretty good spaghetti and field of industries to be really excited about. So I'm curious, how do you what does it mean to you? And what, I guess to some extent, what do you want people to take away from when they read something like that, when you're trying to really kind of give people a sense of who you are?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for having me on here. I feel very special getting to have a recorded conversation with you, unlike the previous conversations, which were unrecorded. And
at least by me.
Yeah. So my LinkedIn profile, yeah. So I kind of generally, if you look at any social platform that I'm on, including LinkedIn, I mean, if you look at my profile picture, it's pretty unprofessional. It's just it's just a picture that I took of me on a Google Meet call or something. But yeah, so there's kind of 3 components there, and they all 3 relate to kind of the new thing that I'm wanting to build in the healthcare space. So my current startup is called Sehatu Sleep. We are looking at how to resolve people's sleep concerns and also do it in a way that advances how healthcare works. And so what I'm really interested in trying to figure out is, in healthcare, there's a lot of problems. Institutional healthcare has a lot of problems. Medical insurance has a lot of problems. And independent clinics, medical clinics that help people, with either primary care or specialty care, they also have a lot of problems. And so what I want to be able to figure out is, how do I solve some of those problems in the context of providing sleep care? So focusing on sleep as the medical concern. And then how do I change what the experience is like in receiving that care so that it solves a lot of those things that I don't like about conventional healthcare solutions. And so I've mentioned health tech in the bio, and operational ingenuity and wellness. All 3 of those relate to what we want to do with sleep, in the sense that in health tech, there's a lot of ways that they're not ready yet, but there's a lot of ways that are being developed to track sleep and to measure objectively what somebody's sleep is like and how it's improved, or try to quantify what certain elements of your sleep are like. Maybe you can track when you wake up and when you go to sleep, or whether you had a certain number of interruptions, or maybe if you were snoring. And so all of that type of data can be tracked. And some things like REM sleep, people say they can track, but I have my doubts. You have to track brain waves, and a lot of sleep trackers can't really do that. So working with the health tech is, I think, really important for us. And so what I want to be able to do is take that and put it into the equation with how we help people with sleep symptoms, is look at health trackers, sleep trackers, and be able to recommend good ones and be able to use that data to help people with their sleep problems when they come to us. The second side to that is kind of wellness services. So this might be kind of this is kind of a big one, but I'll try to be really specific. In healthcare, you have medical level help, and medical level help kind of relies on doctors, and doctors have very limited bandwidth. They're super busy, everybody wants their attention and they don't have that much time. So they end up seeing people not very often a year, if at all. And they see people for a little bit of time, and they rely on a team to help them take care of a patient's needs. But the problem in there is that people need someone to hold their hand sometimes, and they need somebody to talk to and ask questions, follow-up questions, or have educational resources, or troubleshooting for something as time goes on. And a doctor's time is so limited that getting access to a doctor is difficult when those situations arise. Mm-hmm. But on the other end of the healthcare spectrum, which is growing but hasn't yet received the same amount of respect or the spotlight on, is health coaches. People who essentially provide healthcare services but aren't physicians. They're not from a hospital, or they're not like a specialty practice in the medical clinic world. And these are people who might be nutritionists or yoga instructors, mental health, movement coaches, a whole variety of people. And what I think would be useful, based off of just what I've seen in our space, especially in the context of sleep, is if we could partner with those coaches and allow people to have access to coaches and to the doctor as needed. So when they can see the doctor when they can see the doctor, but then they have access to a health coach when they need ongoing support, or they need someone to talk to or work on non-diagnosis type of problems. So they've been diagnosed by a doctor, for example. Hey, you have insomnia. Hey, this is what you need to do. This is how we're going to do it. I've checked your health, your sleep tracker, and see that this is data that shows me XYZ about your insomnia. But now I'm busy and I've figured out what is the problem and what you need to do. Here's a health coach that I know is trustworthy, can help you with maybe like yoga in the context of sleep, or fitness in the context of losing weight, or mindfulness. And that person can be a great resource for you, and they can also relate to me information that I need to discuss with you on our next medical visit. And so that's kind of, I guess I wanted to be specific, but that's kind of a long way of saying that's health tech then being partnered with wellness services like health coaching. And then operational ingenuity is just like the glue that is like a general reference, like the glue of like making this whole thing work. If it works, is if we can combine medical care with health tech and health coaching and do it all in a way that works for a patient seamlessly, that would be operational ingenuity. So that is what I intend to mean with my bio. But yeah, I know it's a little opaque.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And if you can, especially in the health field, any of them, wellness, seeing a doctor, any of that stuff, if you can make it not painful, like you've already improved people's lives. And for people out there, sometimes health tech and health related matters, like it's not maybe something in your daily life. Sleep affects everyone, so that's what's really exciting about this conversation. But a lot of times when you start seeing the doctor, it's when you're kind of on the older side, right? Like there's a long period of time where it's like, check up, you're doing good, come back later. So you don't really have the part where there's something wrong and you need that extra help. And even like, insurance companies are kind of they do a lot of weird things. Like I think there's like one insurance company that's trying to they're gonna deny your emergency room visit if they think it wasn't warranted, and no one else gets a say in it. It's like, they don't know, you don't know any better. Like if you're hurting, you need to go to emergency room. That's like the only calculation that people can make, when they're not medical professionals. But so I think just the quality of life upgrade of just trying to like seamlessly integrate stuff and give people the support, the impact it can have on people is, I think, cannot be overstated. I'm curious, what was the experience that made you pick sleep and pick this in particular, if there was one? And if you can kind of like walk us through it.
Yeah. And by the way, I think I know which insurance company you're talking about. I was kind of trying to decide before this if I want to name names and call people up. So like typically when I talk about healthcare, I can be relatively abrasive because I get really tough on what the conventional practices are in the world of healthcare. But yeah, there's just a lot of healthcare is a whole mess, man. But I'm sure we'll talk about some of those things.
Oh yeah, I guarantee it. Wrote them down, but feel free to tangent. We can. I have a. I'll make a note to ask you about the experience. But if there's something about
Yeah.
health insurance companies in particular that's striking right now, happy to go into it.
Well, I can tie it into why I'm in the sleep space. So my background is not in healthcare. My background is also not in wellness services or health tech. My background is, I mean, basically rooted in tech or in high tech. And however, I have two parents, my mom and my dad. And my mother is a yoga instructor and a meditation instructor. And my father is a physician. He's a board certified neurologist and a board certified sleep specialist. And so over the years, I have heard from both of them about, hey, these are good things that are happening in the space. These are good things I've been able to do for people I care for, my clients or patients. Here are like common problems I see. Here are like things that I do differently that no one else does that make a lot of sense. And over the course of these years, as I've heard these things, seed has been slowly planting in my head. And I've while I've never intended on entering the health space, I started just discussing with both of them. I started seeing how important these problems are and how important these solutions are and how impactful they can be. And specifically in the world of sleep, because conventionally, if you have a problem with sleep, you kind of go to one of those three solutions that I kind of mentioned before. So one is the medical world, one is the health tech world, and one is the wellness or health coaching world. And all three of those have problems where the quality of care that you can get from all three of them isn't very good. But the severity of the sleep problem is really, really high. So, I mean, I think there's a statistic from the CDC. I think it's something around 30% of everybody, the world, every person, or the whole population, 30% of people have some sort of sleep problem that they're struggling with on a regularly consistent basis. So that might be insomnia, sleep apnea, might be nightmares, might be being a night owl and not being able to work that into your schedule, that your regular life. And so this causes problems for your person's daily life, and it also is a massive hit to the economy. People don't realize how much value globally is lost because people have problems with their sleep. There's billions of dollars that are being lost in terms of value produced at work, and the quality of life that people have, because sleep, if you're not familiar, is essentially the maintenance phase of our life. When we go to sleep, our bodies and our mind are doing all this work to get us to function really, really well. And this type of work is necessary to prevent chronic illnesses, to prevent things like memory loss, things like dementia, things like cancer are tough to fight against unless your maintenance phase is working at its best. And interruptions to your maintenance phase and disruptions and behavioral changes that cause an inconsistent maintenance phase will create health problems that might not be readily viewable, I guess, but will come on later in life. And so, these are things that I had heard over the years from both my mom and my dad. And I'm like, wait, this thing is huge. Like, sleep is so important. Why aren't people getting like a really good help for it? And so going back to the three ways that people do get help for it, healthcare institutions, the medical world is, and I don't have an answer to why, but they don't invest in providing help for sleep. I guess I'll name some names. Your healthcare institutions like Mercy, Kaiser, Sutter, they'll do billions of dollars in revenue a quarter. And so that translates to maybe hundreds of millions in net profits. By the way, some of them are nonprofits like Sutter. We can talk about that later, but they don't invest in creating solutions for people who have sleep problems. The quality of care is so poor that if you're in Kaiser, for example, and you say, hey, I have this problem with sleep, you'll be sent to a pulmonologist who focuses on the lungs, or you might be sent to like a meditation instructor, but no one specializes in like what is going on with sleep. How do I assess and then come up with a treatment plan that really works for you. So it's very like superficial level of care. It's like a checkbox that someone said, oh yeah, send them to this XYZ person who doesn't really know all about sleep, but it's good enough. So it's really confusing why healthcare institutions aren't providing that level of care, especially when they're spending a ton of money on cancer centers and et cetera, five-star treatment for other things. And so people go to healthcare institutions and the system fails them. The second way people get help is health tech, mobile apps, sleep trackers. These are ways that people try to self-assess and self-resolve their sleep problems, but sleep trackers aren't really advanced enough yet to be able to provide you actionable insights or reliable data for certain parts of your sleep. But what it shows us is that people want to try to self-help, like use self-help to figure out what's going on and fix it. The other issue is that these apps and trackers are totally automated and don't provide a personalized solution for your specific sleep problem in the context of your life. And so there's something useful there, but it's not good enough on its own. And then the third way people try to get help with sleep is like, what I mentioned previously, health coaches, wellness services, go to a meditation instructor, try yoga classes, have a fitness instructor, somebody who might have reliable or unreliable knowledge of sleep. It's uncertified. There's a lot of people out there who call themselves sleep consultants or sleep coaches whose information, when I've reviewed it, is not really accurate, but people go to them because I don't know where else to go. I need to go to somebody for help, and that's where I go. And so there's these three kind of solutions that are conventionally where people go to for sleep help, and sleep is so important and such a big problem that it makes sense to create a solution that one consolidates the best of those three solutions and provides a level of help that is beyond what those three can provide independently, and actually helps people resolve or treat their specific problems in a way that is knowledgeable and certified. So that's why that's why I think sleep is important and why I want to do something in this space.
I mentioned it just on one element that I'm thinking of at the tail end is instead of having to go through so many, like this year I got a new insurance plan, just as a personal story, and I saw so many different doctors, because not all doctors are created equal for people out there. Like, the law of averages basically is like, when you see a doctor, there's a good chance that person's below average. And so do you want someone below average being like, you don't have cancer, come back in a year? So like I saw a bunch of doctors to find the right ones to see people. And so, similarly in the wellness space, when you don't have people certified, you don't know who you're going to get. I imagine like having this ability to kind of interweave everything into a system where people can know like, hey, these people are validated, these people are trusted, and here are the people that have also been taken care of in this way. I think that takes a lot off of it, because it is hard to basically speed date a bunch of doctors in the hopes that you can kind of suss out if they're good or not. And that's really hard to do. It's really hard to tell, because their whole life is, they know the technical stuff. It's like, talk to someone who who's somewhat of an expert in their field, and they've learned all the jargon to kind of make it seem like they're an expert in their field. So you kind of like have to know someone who can really get into the grime on that. Similarly to the insurance issue, I'll say this, like, insurance used to be worse, like in the US.
Well,
but I've been reading this, we're gonna talk about books later, but I've been reading a bunch of books on like the ADA and like the health reform in the US, and it's like some of the stuff I was already aware of, like if you had a pre-existing condition you couldn't get help, but like some stuff, like the fact that we used to have insurance lifetime caps. So like let's say you have like you have something with Blue Cross, and they're like, we will cover you for 2 million, and after that you're on your own, you're off, you get out of here, don't get sick again, and you have to get another plan. But then getting another plan, they're like, oh, you already rang up a thing over here, which is quite insidious of itself, because the prices themselves are inflated. So it's not like things actually cost $10 when in or $1,000 when it should cost like 10. So you're paying like above, and you have a cap, and like, oh, it just sounded so horrible. Like there was a person with like hemophilia that by the time that they were 15 already met the cap and couldn't get insurance again. But that was before this existed. But I have a funny story. So I was reading a book on Grant, and then I'm curious, like, what other kind of similar anecdotes you have around the sleep space that kind of like you think about a lot as you interact with people and help them try to understand the importance of sleep. But so someone was talking to Grant, who, if people don't know, he was a president and he was like the supreme leader during the Civil War, and he went from like being like nobody to being supreme leader, which is pretty cool. But someone said, like, Napoleon only slept like 4 hours a night, and Grant was like, no, he didn't. Like, I guarantee, like, he may have been 4 hours a night, but he probably like made up for it in other ways. Like, because Grant would do the same thing. He would sleep a little bit at night, and then he just like randomly fall into a barrel and just like take a nap throughout the day. So he'd end up having the 8 hours or whatever he needed. But so yeah, I'm curious, are there other similar stories or anecdotes that you found to be really effective in helping people kind of appreciate the significance of sleep? Because even though it does account for roughly a third of people's lives, I do agree, like, sometimes people just don't really appreciate the significance it has on their lives when it's not well.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, it's funny to think about or like even quote unquote supreme leaders or generals or people from the past who it's hard to really verify how much of their sleep and wake schedule is true. I mean, except for their own documentation and what people observed. But as I see, so before I say anything, I forgot I should mention nothing I say here is considered medical advice. I'm not a
Yeah.
I'm not a physician. But think of it this way. If the so a lot of people recently on Reddit, after say on Reddit, I've seen a lot of discussion about how people want to try polyphasic sleep cycle, or they want to optimize their sleep and figure out something that's hidden that they're not told that they can like do to their sleep that makes it supercharged and allows them to function at some Superman level. The first thing we need to look at is how the human body is designed. What is the function of sleep, and what is nature's way of making sleep work the best? And science will tell you, human history will tell you that one, humans are designed to sleep at night when it's dark. So sleeping during the day, it's not going to be as restful as sleeping during the night. Sleep for creative people who might be night owls and then catch up with sleep during the day, their sunlight exposure is significantly reduced. And sunlight or daylight is really is needed. Our bodies crave that, because without that, we have an increased potential for mental illnesses like depression, anxiety, et cetera, et cetera. And so when you try to change what nature tells us to do, oh, I want to sleep during the day instead of sleep during the night, there are problems that you may not foresee that can come up. Another aspect of like why sleep is how sleep is designed, is we are not designed to sleep in multiple phases. We are designed to sleep in one continuous way, because our body goes through different stages of sleep, and to artificially cut up those stages and act like you're going to go sleep again later and just magically start where your sleep phase was and end where it needs to be is presumptuous. It's you can't really calculate those types of things. Your body is going to do what it's going to do when it is designed to do it, and trying to hack that is I think unproductive. I think people are much better off understanding how their body works, what nature tells us the body is designed to do, and then optimizing that. So sleep at night, sleep as long as your body wants to. Don't try to come up with ways to interrupt that or mess with that. One of the things that I want, like, I was learning about sleep as I was building this, and looking online, like Reddit or Twitter or YouTube, there's some people who talk about sleep, some really great people, but there's not really a reliable source of continuous education and resources that helps people understand how sleep works, why it is that way, and what happens if this happens, etc. And so that was something that I wanted to incorporate with Sehatu Sleep. And so we put out free educational content and resources all the time, everywhere, on every platform, your favorite app, and YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, everything. And that's one way that I hope that I can learn more about sleep, and I can help other people learn more about sleep. Like, why does sleep paralysis happen? Why does sleepwalking happen? What happens if you're sleep talking? Or like, what if you interrupt someone while they're sleepwalking? Is that bad? And like, why does that happen? And how can I stop that? These are all kinds of things that we put out content for. It might not be appropriate for me to explain or answer all those questions because I have medical experts that are better at that, and we turn that into content. But yeah, if you want to learn more about those types of things, follow Sehatu Sleep on your favorite social place.
Mm-hmm. There's an interesting story. I think it's at the early 1900s. There's this great detective who was going on vacation, and he goes to this town, like renowned, like everyone in France knew this guy. He was like the Holmes of France. And there's a murder the day before. He was on vacation in this area, and he's just kind of walking by on the beach, and like, you're Holmes. I forget his name, so I'm gonna call him Holmes. And they're like, yep. And he's like, well, we have a case. You wanna? Yeah, I'll go look at it. And so he looks at it. He's like, okay. He looks at the scene, that dead person, tracks, all these other things. And so he's looking at, and they're like, oh, we've been through all this. And he's like, did you walk over there? And because like it looks like it came from over there, like washed up on the shore. And so he goes up the shore, and they're like, oh yeah, we definitely didn't go over here because there's new tracks that lead out to where a car was. And they pour some mold into the shoe. If anyone's a Bigfoot fan or anything like that, they put the mold and get the giant big feet. And so they have an impression of the shoe of the person, and he looks at it and he gets really quiet. And he and they're like, what's wrong? And he's like, I don't know, I think we need to see more stuff. And so they think they don't know who it is, they can't crack it, and they're like, will you help us solve this case? And he's like, you know what, I think I can solve it. And so he comes in, he goes home, he comes back, and he looks at more of the evidence, and eventually he says, all right, I can tell you who did it. And they're like, okay, sweet, because like we have no idea. Like we were about to like shelf this and walk away. And so he's like, I did it. And like, what? You're like, this guy can't have done it. Like he's Holmes. Why would Holmes kill someone? He's like, I think I was sleepwalking. I don't know what it is, but like that shoe is my shoe. The dirt on my shoe is at home was the matching of that shoe. And so he basically sleepwalked, went out there and killed this person, and went back to his thing without realizing it. And he's like, locked me up. They didn't believe him. And they thought like, oh, maybe he had a guilty conscience, and he's just trying to like get ahead of it, which is kind of funny because they would have just gone away anyway. But so they lock him in this thing and they watch him, and they put like a knife in there to see what he would do. And no, they put a gun in there with empty bullets, like blanks, to see what he would do. And like 3 days later, he grabs the gun and starts emptying the gun at the guard randomly while he's sleeping. No. And he was like, okay, no. So it's sleep related. But so that's a kind of a fun story about the things you can do while sleeping if it's not done, if you have some imbalance there. But I'm curious, just like
that's rare.
Yeah, the extremes are fun. But so personally for you, have you experienced like people talk about this and it's elusive. Like when I wake up, I wake up and it's like neutral, I'm ready for the day. But do you feel like generally well rested when you wake up in the morning, especially with someone who's like running a startup and he's doing all these things? Like,
well, so part of my like self-improvement process has definitely been significantly affected by working on this type of company. A lot of my life has been a night owl type. So, what's really important for me is momentum. And when I have momentum, I just like, if I'm working on something, if I'm building something, if I'm being creative, and I'm going, like I will keep going until eventually I hit like all right, time to knock out. And that has its problems. But one of the problems was that, I would hit a stride at like 8, 9, 10 p.m. And I'd be like, oh, I'm building this thing. And okay, now here's how to do the next thing. And my brain is just flowing and everything is pumping. But at some point it's like 2 a.m. and I'm like, oh wait, and I'm messing up my sleep schedule. I'm gonna have to like stay up, or I'm gonna have to go to like stay asleep when it's still like 10 a.m. or something, and the sun's gonna be out. It's gonna be hot, and it's gonna be really bright. And it took me to work on this company to be like, that should change. And so I tried it. I took my own medicine and I felt a lot better. Going to sleep earlier has been really impactful. Waking up. So I should preface this, but with one thing is there's this notion that like waking up at 5, 6, 4, 5, 6 a.m. is the best way for leaders to be awake. You got to wake up super, super early before the crack of dawn to be like a really effective and sharp leader. I disagree. I think if you sleep enough and well enough and don't wake up at 4 a.m. and instead wake up at 8 or 9 a.m., you're still going to be a great person, very sharp. And that's what might be best for you. There isn't like a one size fits all kind of approach. And that's also how it is kind of for me. So I don't wake up at 4, 5, 6 a.m. But I sleep when it's dark and I wake up when it's the morning. And after I kind of switched out from mostly a night owl type of schedule, I did notice that when I wake up, I'm a lot more sharp. But I still have a lot of health kind of tests that I'm doing on myself and figuring out what works for me and what doesn't. But at the end of the day, it just comes down to how self-aware are you? How much do you know about how well you feel in the morning or how you sleep at night? And if it looks like, or if you feel like, I keep wanting to stay up really late and then wake up later, maybe there's some way to keep that feeling and make some adjustments so that you feel actually even better. If that makes sense.
No, it makes 100% sense. I used to stay up for weeks at a time, just solving problems.
Oh no!
And my now wife, she was my girlfriend at the time. We like bumped into each other. We were in college at the time, and she's like, "Lowell, have you eaten?" And I won't eat either. I'll just like be a zealot. This was very many years ago. I'm like I've gotten better, but like I was like, "No, I ate with you yesterday." And she's like, "Lowell, that was a week ago." I was like, "Oh, yeah." I guess I should eat. So it's
Lowell,
like,
what are you doing?
yeah. And so I think of it like it's almost like an addiction when you're solving a problem, when you're like really starting to get into flow of it. It's like when you're anyone who's really read a book and someone just like grabs that book and rips it out of your face, like how painful that is. Like imagine the opposite of that. Like that's how kind of great it feels. But I'm curious in that corrective, recognizing for yourself that maybe doing that is not great. And it does sound like you didn't go weeks at a time, which is good. I'm curious, how have you corrected that? Because that's a negative habit or like a bad habit. As you, so I'm curious, how have you, like when you start cycling back into it? Because like I think of like habits like roads in your mind, and so even though you're trying to build a new road, sometimes it's like, man, why I want to go on this dirt patch when I can go on this nice paved highway to where I want to go, even though there's like I don't know, like a guy on a gun waiting to get you there, which is a bad habit. So how have you been able to reinforce building this new highway versus like reusing an old one? And generally, like, how has that process been for you?
Yeah, I like that question. Well, so first of all, on your weeks at a time staying awake,
It was not good.
definitely not good. But also, you weren't awake for all that time. The brain has kind of like an automatic switch where if you are sleep deprived, you might not even notice it at times, like in the moment, but your brain will automatically kind of go into like mini sleep, emergency sleeps. So if you've ever stayed up all night or woken up super 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 early and not had enough sleep, and you're in your car and you're driving and you kind of just like become self-aware and you're like, wait, I don't know what just happened. Like I was at my house and now I'm over here at like the office and something happened in between. There are moments where your brain literally went into sleep mode like very quickly, just as like an emergency switch. And by the way, that's also one of the major causes of car accidents, of fatal car accidents.
Yeah, don't recommend it.
Yeah.
Don't do it.
Yeah,
it's much nicer not to be doing it.
And so, yeah, like part of the reason like why I wanted to change some of that for myself is because I began to internalize the long-term effects, and I rationalized the short-term effects. So if I had stayed up whenever, like as much as I enjoyed having that momentum continued, One of the common problems with creatives and like, founders is that the brain is like always running, and it kind of always feels like it has to be running because there's a million problems, there's a trillion fires to put out, and you're always thinking about the future, and everything is happening all at once. And when you're in that mode, it's hard to shut off. And shutting that off is the primary requirement to go to sleep. So if your brain is constantly active and you can't shut it off, well, then your momentum takes you, and then maybe you end up like Lowell and stay awake for a long time.
This was 5 years ago, but don't do this.
yeah. And so can't emphasize enough not to do this,
don't do it. I didn't like it. It just felt good to problem solve.
And that's kind of what happened to me as well. Is I like rationalized like, oh wait, at night like it kind of feels good to have that momentum, but in the morning and in the midday, like I don't feel sharp. Like I feel dull. Like the waves in my brain aren't very. I don't feel like I'm totally here. It takes me a long time if I stay up and then wake up late to actually feel like I'm ready to be sharp again. And it was kind of like a perpetual cycle where like, well, because I stayed up late last night and I had this momentum, now the whole day I'm kind of just like dull, and then I'm again sharp at night. And I didn't like wasting the whole day. It kind of felt like I was performing under what I have the potential to do. But the other side to that was like internalizing the long-term effects. It can be tough as a startup founder. For anyone who's listening, if you are a founder or you're working on these types of problems, like I know the pressure is on to get these done quickly and actually come up with a solution. But in the long term, we're setting ourselves up for some pretty severe consequences. The human body is pretty strong. Like we can withstand anything for a short amount of time. If you stayed up for 72 hours once, you're not gonna die suddenly, hopefully, but the human body can rebound from that. But once that becomes a habit, we're setting ourselves up for mental illnesses and the potential for chronic illnesses and shorter memory loss or shorter less short-term memory retention or long-term memory retention. Because what I realized is that when we're asleep, our memories are literally being sorted like cabinets. So if anyone's watched that SpongeBob episode where I'm going to reference SpongeBob, but there's a episode where in SpongeBob's head, you just see like all the little mini SpongeBobs at their desks and everything is on fire and he's panicking and there's a bunch of papers everywhere and no one's sorting anything. That's kind of what happens when you don't sleep, is everything that you've been experiencing during the day and what you need to remember for the next day is being sorted while we're asleep. And unless we sleep enough at the right time in the right way, we don't have that kind of access to what we need to know or what we need to remember. And that becomes a problem when you're a founder because then you can't make sharp decisions. You can't have strong memory recall and figure out what you were talking with, I was talking about this with my developer yesterday and now my memory retention is problematic because I have to like ask him everything that's going on. I don't know. That's just how I felt. So part of the solution, that's kind of a roundabout way, is if the problem is that your brain is just running, your mind is really active when you want to go to sleep, the key is to learn how to shut off that noise. How do you shut off that noise without using a chemical, without using some sort of harmful substance? So that could be, some people use alcohol to shut off their brain. Some people take, a medication, like a prescription. And our philosophy is that those things don't work. For most people, that's not the healthy way to go about it. What we can do is actually use specific techniques to practice and train the mind on how to shut off the noise on its own and feel calm and peaceful so that when we want to go to sleep, we can sleep. And I mean, these techniques can also be used just to become calm in moments of stress. But those were techniques that I practiced, and I was able to, adjust my sleep schedule where needed. I did use a little bit of melatonin, which is okay, but in low doses, because so if anyone uses melatonin, don't use melatonin. I mean, we recommend don't take melatonin if it is less than 10 hours from the time you want to wake up. So melatonin stays in the brain for a long time. And I've seen ridiculous amounts of melatonin usage that people take 30, 40 milligram doses of melatonin. and they'll take it and be like, oh yeah, I'm going to go to sleep faster, and then I'll be able to wake up at 6 a.m. And I took it at like 12 a.m. One, you're going to be more groggy the next day. The melatonin is still going to be in your brain, so you're not going to be able to enter that wakefulness state, and it's going to mess up your day. So melatonin is not a sleep. This is not like a sleeping pill, the way that people think about it, but it can be used to adjust your sleep schedule so that your brain realizes that, hey, it is now time to sleep. And so a combination of melatonin to adjust my sleep schedule, and then training my mind on how to calm down when I want it to, was really key. And both of those are techniques that my medical experts help patients with.
Is there a specific technique that you use that was effective for you in terms of
Yes.
quieting your mind?
There are two techniques that our head physician has designed. Of course, there are many ways to do this, but this is the way that we have found to be the most effective. So for our insomnia patients, this is over 90% effective in treating their insomnia. A combination of cognitive behavior therapy for insomnia, and that merged with integrated restoration techniques called iRest. You can also call it yoga nidra. There are essentially combining these techniques creates something called sleep therapy or guided sleep meditation. You could, it's just semantics at that point. But what you're doing is learning how to let things be when it's time to sleep. So there's this concept of letting things go. And when you want to feel calm, you have to let things go. But letting things go is really hard. And it's hard because, it takes a lot of effort to try to do that. And effort is the opposite of what you want to do when it's time to sleep. The requirement to sleep is to not put in effort. You're literally letting your body take control and put yourself into a sleep state. And so what these techniques do is they allow you to reflect on what you're grateful for, understand that, this is everything that is happening around me. Oh, the fire alarm is going off in the building next to me. The dog over there is barking. And like this, there's this fan in my room that's really noisy or something. Or hey, the TV is really bright, which you should shut off. But anyway, these techniques help train the mind and letting all that stuff just be the way it is. You can accept what your circumstances are and find calm regardless of what all the noise is. So, hey, I have all these problems I got to fix tomorrow. That's stressing me out. But I can let those be. It's time to sleep, and I can take it on the next day. And so, following those types of techniques to do that with repetition becomes kind of like a little superpower that is really useful.
Do you ever kind of like with that 2 a.m. song where like it's 2 a.m. and whatever, we're going to demonetize whatever, but where you're trying to, you write it out. Do you ever like when it sounds like really stuck in your craw, do you like write it out? It's like, oh, I'll do this tomorrow, like to get it out of your system.
Yeah, you should. Actually, this is one of my problems that I'm still trying to fix. Is my to-do list doesn't get shorter. So I have this to-do list, and it's also where I keep notes of like, oh yeah, this, and then I reference it so that I can remember later. And so when something pops up, even at night before I sleep, I'm like, oh yeah, do this tomorrow, or remember this thing. I'll like put it in my app. And it's problematic because I haven't figured out how to really take control of that to-do list effectively, but it's useful because I can remember things that in the moment I don't want to do, and I can do it later.
Is it like there's so much there that it feels like you're drowning, or is it like a matter of like prioritization of the things? Like, is it possible to describe the to-do list horror that you have?
Yeah, so I use an app called AnyDo. It's really cool. It's very simple, and shout out to AnyDo. But it's essentially just a single list. I mean, you can categorize things, but I just essentially have a single like column list of things I want to remember to do, and things that I've scheduled that I need to do. And the horror is that when I check things off, I'll have like 2 more things added after that onto my list. And so it's not that I feel like I'm drowning, but it feels like I need to be able to sort them into separate segments more effectively, so that I know this is the segment of these types of things that I need to do. and this is a separate segment of other things, instead of seeing it all as one large list of stuff that I need to do for my whole life.
So the way you describe it, it sounds like it would feel like you're not getting the win of getting things done. So it does, like, there's something like really nice about, like building a clock that works, or like getting ahead of schedule, or like hitting something and knowing you set things up so it's really well. And so it sounds like when you have those things and like two more gets added to it, two more gets added to it, you never really feel like you're, maybe, I don't know, I'm projecting, like this is a question, but it sounds like it feels like almost like you're not doing the stuff required to be successful, and it like weighs you down, like kind of sounds like a weight to it.
Yeah, I'd say that's somewhat accurate. So it kind of feels like you're always a little bit behind, I guess,
Yeah.
is the way I would phrase it. It's like, I'm always behind. There's always like another fire that I had to put out, and another like thing that I needed to build that I didn't get to. But I did do some things, and they were good. But when I look at my list, I'm like, I haven't done enough. And so that, how do you manage your lists? How do you manage your to-do?
Well, first I would suggest that you're looking at the wrong list. You should look at the list that you got done. At the end of the day, if you look at what's there, like, of course you're going to feel like shit. There's things there, but how do I manage my stuff? I think of things in advance. So for a lot of things you can kind of see coming. So like there's like sales stuff that eventually I'm gonna like hire salespeople for the thing I'm building. And so I've already talked to salespeople and kind of had an idea like who I'd hire, who I'll bring in, the process I'll use. And I have it like somewhat already thought out and like mapped out. So when I slide into needing to finalize it, it's kind of like taking something that's a draft and moving it into finalization form and just executing on it. So a lot of times what I try to do is set things up so that as I go into the phase of needing to handle them, like there's things that you need to do every day so things don't die. And then I think that takes up a rather, in my experience, like a rather small percentage of things that you need to do. And there's things that you can do that are just highly leverageable in terms of getting more things done, getting yourself in a position where you can achieve more, whether that's getting more sales in, building a team, culture, hiring, whatever it may be, building a product like coding. And it's all can be really, really exciting depending on what you're doing. You also should, as like a small caveat, if there's stuff that you're noticing that you're doing that's not exciting for you, you should try and find someone who's excited about that aspect of it, and then think to like, pop that out and make that a position. But so I look at what I need to do and I immediately put that to like my worst time of the day. So like the time of the day where like I'm like least functional, I'll do that stuff. If I need, like today, for instance, I spent 3 hours on the phone with insurance. So that was slotted in to my I don't give a shit time, but it was needed to be done or I wouldn't have insurance. So like there's some needs where it's like, it's not exciting. It just kind of like make sure that the lights are kept on. Like I can keep doing the things I need to do, or the company can doing the things that it's doing. And then for the rest, I kind of just slot it out for when it needs to get done. So like, I don't ever really think about things in a master list. I think of things more as like, when is the right time to effectively tackle them? And then there's always like a little bit of extra time. Like I'll be working on something. Like right now we're working on something. I'll have like an idea like, oh, this, I can use a for loop in this like thing that I'm building. I'll just write down for loop over here, like this little brief snippet, and I'll put it away and I'll go back to what I'm doing. And so like whenever I'm working on something, like I have like spurts of ideas that get added and then I put them in where those things are. So my to-do list is more like a to-do process where I take the things I need to do, slot them for the worst times, and then take the things that are really chewy that I can leverage to like actually doing meaningful things that I think is meaningful, that makes me really excited. And I put those in the exciting times, and then I schedule them out so that I have time to think them through during breaks of the things that I'm working on now. So that when I get to those times, they're already thought through enough where it's just kind of executing, refining, like, is this right? Are my assumptions, like, here are my hypotheses with this new information at the time of doing it. Kind of like as an example, you can talk to a lot of customers, but if you say, when they're like, oh, I'd be interested in this, it's like, all right, would you, well, to be on the list and to be for it, all you have to do is just put a dollar down. And then when it comes out, you'll get a preferential pricing. Like just the idea that you'd have to put a buck in it, you'll immediately know if someone's full of shit in terms of liking what you're doing. So I always try to, as soon as possible, make money in the equation in terms of like a customer, that are they excited or are they just bullshitting and being polite? Similarly, like once you start getting into it, there's the real versus kind of immaterial of just doing it that you'll see. that could be entirely different when it's just in your head, and that slightly gets solidified and makes better when you write it down. And then as you execute through it, you can kind of feel through it as well. But that's a long way of saying I set things up so that they're easy, so that I can leverage my time to be effective. And I think much long term. So like almost every problem I have to now until I get like $10 million a month in recurring revenue has basically been thought through. So then it's just executing the day to day and meeting those milestones as I reach those things. And then I don't look at that as a master list, because that's like, oh my God, it's a freaking mountain. I'm never going to get that. But it's like you can have the little mountains, the little successes, and then you can kind of appreciate them as you go along.
Yeah, I like that. That seems really useful. But I mean, how did you like? What did it take for you to get there? Was it? Are you naturally inclined to kind of set things up that way, or did somebody tell you, "Hey, do this," or did you go through trial and error to figure out a system that works like that?
I'm a weird person. I think things through in a way that most people don't think about things, and I've noticed that over the years that I think differently. No one's told me to do this way, but I've built several startups, and I've noticed that there's a lot of like myths around it in terms of what needs to be done. Like you need to work 90 billion hours a week, and you can't sleep, and you can't have friends or family or work-life balance, and you have to hide how much money you have left. You have to do all these things. It's like, so I like to look at those things and think, do you really need to do these things? And I just look through them, and then I do what I feel is right. It's a heavy experimentation. So like developing culture, for instance, like that, like everyone has as people come in, like they develop that together, and then you can build processes through like 2-week, trials to see like what actually is like the cornerstone of what people are and how the processes will be effective. So really it's the scientific method. I constantly have hypotheses that I then build small tests for and then do them. I mean, like if you like really distilled all that I said, is that like I basically build hypotheses and experiments and then try them out. That's the scientific method. So like, I mean, I think that's more or less my entire life. I grew up on a farm, which is like, farmers are like the most science-y people that you'll probably ever meet, though you wouldn't think it.
I've heard actually. So I have a couple of friends who went from doing something like, I guess in like an urban environment, like they're doing like cancer research or doing military things, and now they are going into farming. Or one of them is already a farmer, but in New York. But I've like I think would you ever go back to living a farmer lifestyle, if I could kind of blanket that as like a farmer lifestyle? Is that something you will return to?
Sure. I love growing things. It's a lot of fun. And there's some experiments that I want to do.
In like agriculture, or on yourself?
Yeah. No, not on myself. There's some experiments I want to do on animals, but in general, no, there's some things in agriculture I want to do.
You gotta clarify that for us, because when you say I want to do experiments on animals,
so I guess like probably the most heinous, it depends on how you want to look at it, is I want to see if I can like uptick cephalopod intelligence and see if I can like artificially induce sentience in a way that like humans would appreciate. So you can do some like cool stuff with like CRISPR and genetic engineering technology. And I've done some stuff with CRISPR in terms of like yeast and fungi, which is actually like most people don't play with fungi in terms of CRISPR. But I generally want to see the extent that you could make like a super creature out of cephalopods. But on the other side, I also want to see if you could genetically engineer tumbleweeds to have like some form of like, you can think of it like nutrient-rich rice, and with a gene drive after 3 generations, it dies out. And so you could basically chuck those out of helicopters, and it would basically provide food for that entire area for 3 generations.
Is that something that people are doing with seaweed, or I saw something somewhere about how people are looking at being able to feed entire populations by just effectively planting. Maybe it might not have been seaweed, but it was something in the ocean.
Seaweed stuff. Yeah, the ocean is a very untapped resources. even in terms of like how we overpopulate it, are depopulating right now in terms of fish and stuff like that. Are there like circling back to your startup life, are there challenges that you've learned from that are kind of like your processes that you like to do now, like kind of similar to me, like thinking ahead and like, you know, having like hypotheses built to test out? Do you have processes now that you use a lot of?
Well, I guess in a practical sense, I see like certain operational things that need to be put in place for me to feel like what I'm building is effective. But so I guess I could be like super specific in this sense, where in like a medical, so Sehatu is virtual, but it's like a medical, it provides medical grade services, right? And so having like systems and like, so I guess I could incorporate medical clinics in you know in this context where a lot of people who run medical clinics do them in a way that either are built on systems that are outdated or don't have effective systems. And from my point of view, like if I'm going to build something, I want effective systems put in place that allow me to iterate on you know how things are done and collect data and then iterate on those and then you know have some way of improving what the business is. And medical clinics generally don't have systems in place to have those improvement structures, like collect data, improve, collect data, improve. And so that's something that I did like right away with Sehatu Sleep. I should clarify before. So this company technically existed before I joined. I joined at the end of 2019, and it existed as a medical clinic, just like your standard medical clinic. And after, like, one of the first things that I did when I came in was think about how systems work in this medical clinic and what needs to be put in place so that the team is able to operate like really on its own and come up with a way where we can collect data on how well we're doing internally and for our patients so that we know what we need to change as time goes on. And so putting those in place was like my first priority. And that's like required for me to work on a project, is I need to have that kind of structure set up, because without that, I feel like I can't accomplish anything. I'm just like, yeah, this thing is going on and that thing is going on, but like, what are those processes and why is it happening that way? And like, why can't we do this to do that? And in healthcare, the culture is such that that type of thinking isn't really encouraged or even like supported very often. Most medical clinics are, you know, they are just trying to figure out how to survive, in a sense, if they're independent clinics. And they're usually doctor run. And again, like, doctors have limited bandwidth and they can't think about all those types of things from a business perspective. So the medical clinic of the future requires systems thinking and business perspective to like improve the care, which sometimes is controversial because people say don't think like a business when you're providing healthcare, but I think that's necessary to provide really great healthcare. So like creating processes that are really effective in the clinic was one of the first things that I did, and that actually doubled our revenue in like 4 months. And so I think that's like that's something that every founder should, if that's how they naturally think, should look to do in their business, is like, what are the processes that are currently happening, and what can I do to create processes if they don't currently exist? Because there's hidden money in what you're doing, and if you were able to kind of sort them out, you know, you'll be able to unlock a lot of that. I don't know if that made sense. I maybe could have worded
That makes sense. It kind of, if I were to summarize it in a quote that I've heard, processes scale, people do not. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah, systems run the business, because if you have good systems in place, like if you put a team in and they can run those systems, like everything will work out.
yeah, the fun thing is figuring out the right systems for the team. So a lot of people that develop systems, a lot of people in general, like I'm not going to name names, but there's like this person I was recently speaking with. If you're listening to this, I mean this with all the love. I don't mean anything mean by what I'm about to say, but like they were looking at a system for hiring, and they basically read a book. They've never really done it before, And so I was like, they were like so lockjawed on terms of like using the system. And so I was proposing like, be more experimental about it, look at the data, whatever, even though I've, hired up to 20 and like over the course of 3 months, like I've done hiring a lot. And I know like, I actively read on this subject. And so, like a lot of people sometimes will just go into it with like this, I've read this, so I'm going to, like copy and paste here. Or they've done it one way that has worked, and I'm going to copy and paste this. I'm going to put it there. I think that's a big fallacy that you've also hinted at earlier in this conversation, where people look at examples and assume they're them in those situations, when really you should look at it as like an homage potential to gather data. Shut up, phone. To gather data, to then see like how it could apply to your situation. Like biographies and anything. Like when someone tells you a story, the thing shouldn't be, well, now I'm gonna only sleep 4 hours a week and I'm gonna work 100 hours, and it's like maybe that's effective for that individual. Like not everything is individualized, and you should experiment to find your best. And so like every team has their best, and that doesn't necessarily mean like what you've read or anything available out there. You have to kind of like experiment to find your own way. But I think that's really like a fun thing to do. That I think I see a lot of people do it wrong, where like they just try and carbon copy what's worked in the past versus using that with evidence-based approach to develop something novel in the future that works even better and customized to the fit of the organization.
Yep, well said. Yeah, you said it way better than I could have. I mean, what I do have to emphasize is just that in healthcare, like this type of thinking doesn't really exist,
No.
and it sucks because it is so needed here. You know, I'm not like, part of the reason is like institutional healthcare kind of has really big walls, and if you exist outside of their walls in an independent clinic form, you're just pushed away. No one wants to work with, and like the institutions don't want to work with you. And if you are an independent clinic and you were, if you had the audacity to go into the space and do it yourself, like there's so many things that you need to do, so many things you need to figure out that for some reason this type of thinking isn't up on the priority list, because I guess people are just struggling to figure out how to launch a business in healthcare in the first place. And when they're doctors, it's tough to be able to do all of those things. My qualms with healthcare businesses go a long way, but if I don't know if you've been following some of these new like primary care kind of businesses like Forward, what's the other, One Medical, Carbon Health, any of these guys? Are you familiar with those?
They're not popping to mind. What about them? What are they that's drawing your attention to them?
So typically, so if you live somewhere where there's like a doctor's office around you, there's a doctor who's like, I'm going to launch my own clinic, and they did, and now they have a little office somewhere, and they'll see you and take care of your health, and send your documentation to another physician when needed. They essentially operate as small businesses, but some of these new like primary care models have, some of them are membership based, where there's no insurance in the equation, and some of them accept insurance and have like a self-pay model included, kind of reminiscent of concierge medicine, if you're familiar with concierge medicine. And what they're doing is basically acquiring a whole bunch of independent primary care clinics and creating like a chain. So you have like a chain of clinics which operate differently from a healthcare institution, because it's focused a lot more on kind of like that patient experience, and it's a smaller scale, but they operate more advanced than kind of your standalone small business medical clinic, because they have the thinkers and the operational ingenuity to create systems which make the care more effective and the business to be more sustainable. Now, caveat there is that at least like some of these startups I mentioned are burning a ton of money. Like, I don't think, as far as I know, I might be wrong here, fact check this yourself, but as far as I know, none of them are profitable. I think one of them, someone needs to fact check me, and they're going to correct me, and they're going to be like, no, you're wrong. But I think Forward is like billions, like behind with what, like they're underwater. If you're from Forward and you're listening to this, don't hate me. That's what I last saw. But I think how they're doing things is really interesting, is that they're taking a startup mindset, applying it to primary care medical clinics, and how you framed systems thinking and evidence-based approach seems like that's what they're doing. But it's really cool to watch that space because it's different from an independent small business medical clinic. So that was essentially the point, is just this new way of doing primary care that is different from independent clinics and healthcare institutions.
Yeah, it's kind of. Do you think that it's kind of like Amazon or Uber? I don't think Uber has made a profitable quarter yet, but like Amazon has been like, they were like down every quarter for like 10 years and they made a lot of money. Do you think like the reason they're below water, they're just like in that phase, or do you think there's something fundamentally wrong with the business model?
No, I think they're just early.
Yeah.
I have high hopes for what they can achieve, but I think the model has yet to be proven. So like the membership model has yet to be proven, and the quality of care has yet to be proven. They usually hire. So when you shop local and you know who your farmer, if you go to a farmer's market, you know who the farmer is, you know what the quality is. You have a direct relationship with these people, and the level of service you receive is like, really high grade. The moment you try to create like a franchise system or something like that, you lose that connection with the person you're receiving a service from, and it might not always be at the level that you could get if you went local and a small scale. So the moment you take it to like a chain of healthcare clinics, the physicians may be, there's still physicians who are qualified, but they may not have all of the tools and tricks and knowledge that you would be looking for. And it's a different experience. So I don't want to hate on, like you said, some doctors are just not that good. There's a lot of bad doctors out there. And I haven't been convinced of the quality of physicians that some of these guys are hiring.
Yeah. It's kind of like beggars can't be choosers. Like we're so behind, like we need to, pump out more doctors. I'm curious what your thoughts are on this as well. And then I have some questions regarding like startup founding, but how you see the relationship of like AI and machine learning technology in terms of working with physicians. My view in the short term is that it can free them up to do more of the the focus, interesting stuff versus like some of that like boring stuff. So then we can get like more quality for the quantity we have. But I'm curious. I feel like you have an opinion of this. Like how do you think things are going to go?
So one of the challenges that I've kind of learned while trying to do this is that innovating in the healthcare space is tough, usually because the people that you're wanting to collaborate with don't think like you, in the business sense. So like they might not have the operational thinking that you may have. They might, for example, back to systems, they might not run their business the way that you think businesses should run. But the other problem to that is like there's a lot of rules, and a lot of these rules are outdated, and a lot of these rules are very strict and can get you into a lot of trouble if you take a misstep. So innovating in this space is tough. There's the other side to that is like when a medical office accepts insurance, there are very, very specific things that they have to do to try to get reimbursed by that insurance. And a lot of times, like healthcare is, I think, the only business that comes to mind where you could provide all the service to somebody, you could do everything, and then you could not get paid, and it's okay. Like it's just, oh well, that's just how it works. You accept insurance, and a patient didn't know how their insurance plan works, and it's just bad, messy on all ends. Like you provided a service and went to a patient's deductible. They don't want to pay anything because they thought insurance covers it. Their insurance plan says, hey, this is in our contract. The patient says, I didn't know this. And then the doctor never gets any money, and the patient is angry at the doctor, and the insurance company is like, that's what happens. All of this stuff is so messy that when you try to introduce new things, so if you try to provide a service where a doctor has to read a study, maybe you did a medical test, and you could use machine learning and AI hypothetically to interpret this data and come up with a result. Do I think that could work and do that? I think that would be useful. Yes, but practically, do I think doctors would be willing to do that? No, because they're going to get paid less. Doctors are continuing to get paid less and less. But then B, there's rules in place that would prevent people from wanting to try some of that. So like if someone wanted to use an automated system to interpret test results, for example, it would be an uphill battle on all fronts that at least I can see. Like, can that be done? Probably. Will it be done? Will it be adopted? I'm not convinced, just because of all of the minutia.
Yeah, that makes sense, which is really sad because the potential to have some type of like hybrid model with, you know, people working with machines and new technology to the benefit of everybody. I mean, can it like it's gonna be crazy. I mean, there's a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, I wonder if this is just a US thing, but there's a lot of people who have to like fly to other countries just to get procedures that the US won't even do. Like I know of someone who went to like South Korea to get stem cells injected to their eyes so they could not be blind.
Yeah,
It
medical
worked.
tourism is like a whole new world. People going to Turkey and Mexico to get, you know, plastic surgery and stuff like that as well. Like,
Yeah, Mexico is really good for teeth, apparently, dentistry.
oh wow, okay, yeah, it's a sign of like what people are having. Like people doing that is a sign that hey, something is wrong here. Like there's literally a dentist down the street, and they will not go there. They will go to Mexico because it's more affordable for them. And why is it more affordable? Because of this mess and jumble of things that they're dealing with here. Inflated costs, you know, confusing insurance plans. It's very confusing, and that deters people away because hey, I could just go here, pay straight up, get this done, and I also get to, you know, enjoy the beach or something and try new culture. But yeah, I guess all I really wanted to say is just when it comes to actually providing care in the medical world, like there's a lot of advancements that people want to make, but what's holding us back is that doctors are busy and don't have the drive to try new things because they don't have the bandwidth in their brain to try new things. And the rules are such that if someone wanted to build something that made care better technology wise, adopting that would be like really tough because medical teams are risk averse because of the rules, and the rules themselves are general enough to where if you try to make something new, you might get in trouble and you'll get sued. Someone will say, hey, you're doing this wrong, and they'll come after you, and then your business is done, and then you're done. You know, one just random observation I'll note is that in tech, you have SaaS products for everything. You want to build something in tech, you want to build something in like the crypto world, you will have an entire Lego set in front of you of different technologies, and you can put these Legos together and you can build amazing products, like anything that you can imagine. In healthcare, it's the opposite. People have Legos, people have bricks, people have like wood, and everyone's trying to connect things together, and it doesn't fit. Like it's different languages, they don't work together. Everything crumples together when you try to attach them. Then you try to glue it together, and like it's a mess. So there's a culture change there.
It's interesting because the first healthcare insurance started as something that Bismarck gave to Germans to kind of take the wind out of the sails of the socialists. And then Teddy Roosevelt brought it to the US during his bid to run for the third term as a president on a progressive, the Bull Moose Party, which he only lost because Taft was a piece of crap. Like people talk about like people stealing elections. Look up what happened to Teddy Roosevelt. It's been over 100 years, but you know, not long enough because I'm still pissed off. But anyways, I'll digress. Like they really did steal it. Like everyone wanted to vote for the guy. Taft should have just gone to be justice and been happy getting stuck in tubs. But anyway, so but in the World War II, that's a true story. On World War II, like everything was frozen in terms of salaries, and so like you couldn't like I'll pay a buck more a week if you come join me at my factory so I can produce more planes and get more of that defense money because of stuff that was, you know, like they put like caps on stuff. But so what they could do is they went to a bunch of doctors and they were like, hey, if you see our workers will pay you like $10 a month per worker if you just see them as much as you want. And it was called like a Blue Shield program or something like that. And so the first one was literally just like a company saying, we'll give you like a buck a head if you just see our employees. And that's like the genesis of healthcare in the US, was just like, we'll give you $1, you see them for free. Okay.
Mm.
And now it's like, we give you $1, and then there's like some like abacus with like a Dr. Seussian machine to like figure out like how it works. And, like people can get screwed because they don't understand the contracts and stuff like that, which is funny because the ADA requires that it be no more than like one page, like single, like double spaced with like 12-point font. Like they were so specific in describing it because they knew like it was just so ridiculous. But I think that's just like, it's kind of funny to think about. But how does this all tie into kind of like the Web3 and your passion for that? Like, like there's like such a Venn diagram to you and to the things that you really care about. So I'm curious like how healthcare ties into, Web3 and blockchain in general.
Yeah, I will say one more thing about the rules and stuff for like insurance. In the independent clinic world, if you are running your own medical practice, the overhead that you create when working with insurance is obscene. Like if you look at like when you are using an EHR, an electronic health record system, you may need to use a very specific EHR, and that works in a very specific way, and it's very clunky. And this system is required for you to use so that you can have certain documentation done in a certain way, and transferred in a certain way to other medical providers and insurance providers, so that you can get reimbursed for a service that you provide to somebody who has a specific insurance plan. Is all of that necessary to provide a great level of care at an affordable cost? No, but like you said, it was Taft, the era of Taft when that Blue Shield.
That was FDR, World War II.
Okay, and so the president and our culture is such that we know that insurance exists, and the general idea is that, oh, I have insurance, and that means that I can get healthcare, but people aren't familiar with the nuances of their health insurance plan. And so when they go to a medical office to get care, typically a doctor's office doesn't do a great job of educating someone about what their insurance plan is. But also on the other end, why don't you know what your insurance plan is like? But then when a doctor provides the care and bills it to a patient's insurance plan, sometimes that insurance plan will say, nah, the documentation wasn't exactly like this specific word wasn't used, or like this documentation isn't sent in the format that we want it to be sent in, so we're just not going to pay you. And it's been over 30 days, so like you can't really try to get reimbursement again, or like you have to pay someone to do this appeals process, and then the person that you're paying is also going to be the main person that we talk to for like future billing. And basically there's this entire like system of overhead that is created that makes the insurance system alive, that makes it alive. But because people are so used to using insurance, doctors' offices are almost like compelled to like just accept that they're going to have all this overhead, and maybe they'll make a successful business and get paid, and maybe they won't. But it's just like that's the business conventionally. So if you can tell by how I'm explaining it, I might not be wording it as clearly as I wanted to, but it's just really messy, and it causes a lot of problems on both ends. So I wanted to make sure I make that point. But
yeah, what would to interject before we go to the question I originally asked, which is, who cares? But how would you, if you could, you get to do however you want, you can set up the insurance industry. How would you do it? Like, is there like touchstones that you definitely would want to be a part of it?
Yeah, I think there is a need. I don't think I'm at the level where I have the clarity on like this is the perfect system.
Mm-hmm.
But there are touch points where I'm like, those things are good. It would be, so my startup doesn't accept things like if you're familiar with insurance plans, like Medi-Cal is a way that people get healthcare. I think there should be ways for people to put money into like an account So I think HSA funds are really cool. Like health savings accounts are really interesting. They work for people as far as I've seen. I'm not an expert on HSA funds, so if you know more about HSA funds, maybe you can reach out to us and like tell us how they work. But
Yeah.
HSA funds seem really interesting to me, and it is more straightforward and more clear because one, when you're provided a service by a medical office, they can give you straightforward pricing. Like it's transparent and upfront, and it's not like every insurance plan has a specific contracted rate for specific services for a medical provider. And so what one patient pays may be very different from what another patient pays, or what one insurance plan reimburses may be very different from another insurance plan. But if you have something like an HSA account, like you're essentially using self-pay pricing, but the money that you're using to pay for that has benefit, like there's benefits to that account. And so something like that I think is really interesting. I think self-pay is more attractive for most, or I shouldn't say most. A lot of self-pay pricing is a better option for certain healthcare services than people allow it, like think of it to be. So let me phrase it another way. A lot of healthcare that you regularly receive would be in your interest to pay for that upfront rather than go through insurance, because unless you're dying or you have COVID and you're in the hospital for 4 months or something emergency wise is happening, paying outright for a medical service can be a lot cheaper. The quality of care can be a lot more can be a lot better because it'll be faster. There's no bloating of the process with authorizations with insurance providers, certain documentation requirements and stuff like that. You can, for example, if I give a specific case, if someone comes to us and they snore and we're like, hey, you might have sleep apnea, we could get you a sleep apnea test that you do at home, state of the art, like do it for 2 nights at your own house in your own bed, and then we have a diagnosis like the next day, and then based off of that diagnosis, oh hey, you have sleep apnea, get you on treatment that same week, and now your health has taken a massive turn within the span of a week. Like we figured out that you have a problem, we can treat this problem in this way, and here's the thing that it's going to make your life better and treat that problem effectively, and here's what we can do to make that treatment better over time, and here's what we can do to objectively measure results over time. Like we can do a cognitive test and measure how your brain health improves. If we want to do all of those things and go through insurance, it's going to take weeks. Like you might have to go to a lab because your insurance plan doesn't accept home sleep tests. So you're going to have to go to somewhere else, like do this whole thing, make it really complicated. And then, oh, hey, we eventually find out you do have sleep apnea. We can't give you treatment because your insurance plan doesn't take this. And it also wants us to do this other thing. And so you're going to have to wait like 4 weeks before you're even given some sort of a device that helps you with sleep apnea. And then, maybe someone will help you because your insurance plan doesn't cover us to help you. You can only go to this specific person to go help you. And, the difference in those processes is payment wise might not be that big, but one is clearly more effective and faster. And so going the self-pay route, I think, is something culturally we're not really for in the US, but based off of what I've seen would be better for a lot of people.
Have you seen that primarily with HMOs, or is PPOs the same? Like you see that type of time to, okay.
Both. It does vary. So, if you have like like the reason it varies is because the patient experience might vary greatly. Even if you have a PPO and you just go to a specialist and you're able to be seen, a lot of PPO plans have high deductibles, and people don't realize how high their deductible is. And the medical care that they're receiving isn't as that costly. Like you might need to do a test that costs $100, but because you went through your insurance plan and it was a PPO and you have high deductible and the contracted rate that insurance plan has with that medical provider is higher, you end up paying like $200 instead of $100 for the same test that you could have just paid outright for. And is $100 going to make a big difference on your deductible? No, because it's like, multiple thousands or something like that. So, it depends on the specific insurance plan, but PPOs, HMOs, whatever. In a lot of cases, I think self-pay is a better experience.
The I've been thinking about healthcare a lot, which is why I have like 3 books with an eye shot of this camera regarding the subject. And interesting, like as an agriculture thing, when at a certain point we didn't have food that would be given to kids when they're in school. And so then we were like, hey, we need soldiers. All right. So the soldiers would come in, and boot camp, as you can imagine, most people, it's grueling, it sucks, right? People, Gen Pop people would go into boot camp and they would gain 100 pounds because they would be fed 3 meals a day. And so FDR and a couple other people, it was actually one of the really cool things that they did, but they put into place these agriculture subsidies so it would help out with the agriculture industry. But more than that, they added lunches to kids' meals so they would have all the nutrition they had. And so then soldiers, like when they ever like the population was just overall more healthy, they're more productive, they're happier. I think similarly to healthcare and having like an overall 100% wellness is similar in that way, where it's kind of like right now we don't do it to the extent where like people feel comfortable. I'm going to go see a doctor. I'm going to get taken care of. It can be fast. It can be snappy. Like ruminating on what illness you may have as you're trying to figure out what it is. Like I once got a CT scan. The doctor came in and he looks me in the eyes and he says, "We found something." And he's being so serious about it. And it's like he's implying I have a tumor in my head. And he's like, "Yeah, we found your brain." And I was like, "You fuck yourself. Fuck yourself. You suck." So below average once again, that's out there. And so I think there's like,
well, I mean, that's jokes, but yeah.
well, you shouldn't have said it. He should have been like, "You're fine." Like he just came, he's like, he implies I have a tumor, and he sits it there. He was like, "I'm gonna get this guy." But I think there's like an equal argument that can be made to like having like a better system in place, because it'd be better for people in terms of like their wellness, their mental health, all these things. And if it was like an opt-out system, so everyone had it, organically, and maybe they could like opt into a more expensive system, that was even better. But I think like in many regards, like health insurance is kind of like scraping the barrel in terms of like what's appropriate. And I suspect that the reason why it isn't better is the people who are affected by poor health insurance are usually people who are sick. So how hard, like when you're sick, it's really hard to fight like this stuff, like do all this paperwork, or when you're old and then you're sick. So you got like both those things going against you. And, it's like, it's kind of hard to affect change. So the people who are really getting screwed are the people who are least able to fight back. There's like this really cool guy that I interviewed who, his son got sick, and he literally stopped everything he did, ran for Congress, and like was spearheaded fixing it. Not everyone can do that, though everyone would want to. So I think it's like one of those like cornerstones of society that I think if we did better would be overall better for everybody. So then how do you do it, right? But yeah, so I'm curious, Web3 and healthcare.
Web3. Yeah, I'm really sorry. There's just one more thing, which is what was I going to say? Oh, I just slipped my mind. Anyway,
Healthcare.
It comes back to me. Yeah, healthcare. There was something I was going to say. Anyway, maybe it'll come back to me.
All right.
But yeah, so when it comes to Web3, it's very different. I know it's very different from healthcare. The culture is different.
I guess a lot of people like, as like a bookend, because listeners, listening might not know, what is Web3 and like how do you fit it into what you're doing?
So I just remembered what I was going to say. I'm just going to say one thing about the healthcare thing.
It's all good.
And then I'll define Web3. Insurance is tricky. Medical care is tricky. Going back to the very first question that you had for me at the beginning of this podcast, if someone's been listening all the way through, or if this is cut into pieces, just the first question you asked was about like what the 3 things in my LinkedIn bio mean. I want to try to come up with a solution that helps people more effectively and gets rid of all this confusion stuff, right? In the cases of like people who are extremely sick, this may not apply perfectly, but how can I create a system that allows people to get the care that they deserve with the quality that that they deserve and the frequency that they deserve, or that they want? And so obviously I don't have a solution, but I'm trying to test and experiment and see what might help people, and creating that structure of like medical care merged with health tech, merged with health coaching, and maybe paying like a membership fee to access all 3 all the time is something that I want to be able to experiment with, and I'm still tinkering on and trying to figure out. So I don't have all the answers. I don't know what's going to work for people. I don't know what's going to fix healthcare. I wish I did, but I'm trying to come up with ways that might make a difference or might give me some feedback on what will work. So coming up with a system that merges 3 different versions of getting help with your health is something I think is worth working on. So that's if you have if you have thoughts on like how the future of healthcare should work and you're listening to this, like reach out to me. I want to hear what your thoughts are. I want to hear Lowell's thoughts on how you think this should work and what solutions could be. But we kind of have to fuse our minds together to come up with better solutions.
Yeah, I was going to ask a follow-up on this, which is like, what are some ways that are there specific avenues that you really like people to help out with? Sometimes like a broad ask is like a good primer, but if you can like prime them with like a specific avenue that you're really curious about, like, I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to do this. Like maybe that like can galvanize people listening in. And then if there's like a specific avenue to contact you that you would appreciate, like, Twitter or whatever, like where can they find you when they do have an idea to solve one of the things that you're about to say?
So, I mean, one of the main things I want help with in the health context is like figuring out how people want help with their sleep. That's really one of the main things. I want, like, sleep is so important to me already that creating a solution that elevates healthcare, focus first on sleep, is like what I want to solve. So if you have thoughts on like how you want to get help with sleep and what qualms you have with currently how you improve your sleep, I want to know those. And if you've experienced help with your sleep in some way, it could be anything. Like it could be everything from like, oh, I took this medication. I hope that wasn't the thing, but oh, I took this medication, or I went to this person and this turned everything around for me. I want to hear that, and that's going to help me develop something that is really comprehensive. So if you have feedback on your experience and you have feedback on what you like about your health experience or your process of improving your sleep, that's the type of stuff I want to hear about. And anyone can email me at jibran@sehatu.com. That's Jibran@sehatu.com, or you could just look me up on LinkedIn or Twitter or something, and that would work. But yeah, so I guess that's all the health stuff completed, I guess.
Would you also be interested in hearing what it's like for a loved one who's experiencing their significant other going through these types of problems? So like you really want to have like the whole sphere of it. So if someone has gone through it, like what was it like, what was it like for you? What was it like for them? How would you like to dream to make it better? What were the things you hate? Like really just, anything involving this where you were thinking about your sleep that really, either pissed you off or you loved, or like something about your loved one. Like those are avenues you want to hear.
Yeah, 100%. Like in the case of insomnia and sleep apnea, bed partners observe this oftentimes before the person who's experiencing the symptoms. Yeah. And oftentimes, they are part of the process of that person's treatment when and if they get on treatment. And I want to hear all those things. And actually, so this is kind of a spur thought. I don't know if this is going to work, but for the first like 5 people who give me feedback and email me or like message me somewhere and give me feedback about their experience, I'll send you like $20 worth of Bitcoin. And if you don't have a Bitcoin wallet, I'll just Venmo you or Cash App you something. So, but if you want, I would suggest the Bitcoin. But I'll literally send you Bitcoin for your feedback for the first 5 people.
Sweet, awesome. I'll make sure to clip that specific section and put it everywhere, so you'll get like a bunch. Well, I have not gotten any blockchain technology, coinage, though I thought the Dogecoin was really funny. Because like I don't know, like it looked weird. But so what is like what you make the offer and you say, hey, I'll give you Bitcoin, and you said you suggest that. But I think recently, like, isn't everything been going down?
Look at the last 10 years and then tell me.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, every couple of years, people are alarmed about, oh, Bitcoin is at this new low. Oh no, it crashed to $3 a couple of years later. Oh no, it crashed to $300 a couple of years later. Oh no, it crashed to $3,000 a couple of years later. Oh no, it crashed to $30,000. I don't know about you, but I see a trend there. And so
yeah, sure.
There's that's short-term day-to-day like movements in Bitcoin's USD price, I think are negligible, frankly. Which I do want to. You mentioned Web3 a couple of times, so I do want to touch on that because I didn't mean to ignore that.
No, good. Like, I'd rather the conversation go organically. That's just like one thing I had written down.
Yeah. So like Bitcoin is part of this Web3 like term, and a lot of people like wonder like what is Web3 and like why does it matter? And the reason I like to talk about this is because my interests are basically divided currently in my life into two segments. One is health, like how can I make healthcare better and how can I help people improve their sleep and what can I do in the sleep space? And then two, where is the next era of the internet and how does this affect the world? How does this affect our daily life? What does this change when it comes to how people make money, how people work, how people run their governments, all that stuff? And all of that is going to change. And people should know that this change is coming. And so what Web3 refers to is kind of this next stage of the internet. And it helps to define Web 1 and Web 2 for understanding what Web3 is. So I think it was, you can fact check me, but I think it was 1994 or 1995 when the internet became commercially available. So before that it was private, but somewhere in the mid 90s, the internet became available for public use. And by the year 2000, most people had heard about the internet. Few people were using it, but the first stage of the internet was like being able to share information. Like I could put up a page and say, hey, dogs like this type of things. Dogs don't like these types of things. Like, welcome to my page about dogs. And that was really cool and useful because now I could be in some place where no one knows about dogs, go on the internet and be like, wow, now I know something about dogs. And, as the 2000s move on, we get to kind of more advanced use of the internet where people can now provide services. Businesses can be on this thing called the internet and they can, deliver food to you. Or like there's a chain of services that happen in the background and I can like click a button and have something delivered to my house. And all of that happens without me really having to interact with it. I just kind of like use the internet to like make that happen. And that's basically centered around businesses, central entities, taking my information, having their services created, and then providing that service to me in the real world or digitally. And that it just happens. And so the next version of the internet is Web3, which really is composed of a couple different components. One, I like there's no really standard definition, I don't think, but what I like to incorporate in Web3 is AI, quote unquote, or machine learning, automation, and blockchain technology. So what this means is that Web3 refers to how central entities will be replaced by decentralized entities. So you have centralized companies replaced by decentralized protocols. So instead of a business providing a service, you may have a protocol where certain features that you want are provided by certain businesses, but the way that everything is being run is being done in a way that involves less central parties. So that might mean let's take a look at a city. I love cities. Like I think smart cities are really cool. And the notion of a smart city is like I live in this place and there's data points being collected. Like there's sensors everywhere. Like the city is collecting how many people walk across the street. They're tracking how many times this trash can is full. They're tracking how high the water level goes up and down if you're on the coast. But nothing really happens with this data automatically. It's like it goes to a bunch of analysts and they're like, cool, this is our data. Here's a graph showing, look, the water went up and down. But with the next stage of the internet, what technology allows us to do, this new technology, is we can create systems in our city that automatically respond to this data collected. So there's a term called the responsive city, which I think was coined, I forgot his name, but there's a gentleman at ETH Zurich. It's a school in Zurich that specializes in like studying cities. And so with Web3, with the technology that allows you to automate things, you can take data that is being collected and have computers create a decision based off of that data collected and execute that decision. So, hey, water levels are rising, or like trash can is like really full. Send somebody to that trash can, or like empty that trash can and put it into this like waste management system. And all that stuff happens automatically, like without a human having to go in and like do something. Like what we're also seeing in Web3 is that you can use services online without having to rely on a central party to make that service happen. So if I want to sell something to somebody, I can go directly to the market, not have to pay. For example, if you're on Amazon and you're a seller, you have to pay Amazon, you have to pay like credit card fees, you have to do all of these things. If I have a item that I want to sell, people can look at the blockchain and on an interface that makes me think I'm just looking at a regular website. So I'm not actually having to figure out what the blockchain is. And I can determine that you're trustworthy. These are verified reviews. I can see that you have this amount of services that you provide, and I can pay you for that service directly. And on the seller side, I can provide the service to you directly. And I know that, you know, I'm going to be able to do this quickly and effectively and get paid for it without having to work with a bunch of intermediaries like the bank and the credit card processor and somebody who markets my product and all that type of stuff. So there's a lot of ways, I guess, to frame Web3, but I hope that gives like a little bit of background as to like what this is like.
Yeah. So the previous 100 years were about centralizing things, and you're thinking the next 100 years is about decentralizing them and making them extremely redundant and personalized.
Yes. Like open source work has been a trend for the last, like, since the internet was around, but the future of internet allows us to like make everything open source and make it convenient and usable, which has been different so far because businesses have, like Microsoft, for example, eventually adopted Linux and like sold you products that uses open source material. But now we can have open source technology continue to be like you interact directly with the open source technology instead of having to go through a business that is closed and owns all the information and data that you're interacting with. So there's a lot being done in this space that I guess my main takeaway here is if I've said anything so far about Web3 that is like, oh wait, that seems kind of interesting, like look it up and just be like, yeah, this is happening. I understand that this is happening, and it's worth like looking into. So one of the other things that I do is I'm an organizer for like events and conferences in the space, and there's like a lot of information out there, and I know it can be tough to learn about this type of stuff, but if you go on YouTube and type in some of these words, or you go on Meetup or Bright and type in some of these words, I guarantee you will find something that is reliable and trustworthy, and you can learn about what's going on in this space because it affects every industry that exists, like commerce, healthcare, cities, everything.
Yeah. Similar to the idea that like sometimes there's bad information out there. Are there areas and books, resources online, specific conferences that you'd recommend people check out? So they can kind of like sift through the bad to just go with what kind of is good as a primer.
Yeah. So a few people, I'll just mention a few names in the space. So I'll name a few names and also name a few like brands. So a few names, Andreas Antonopoulos is like, if you're in the crypto space and you are working in the space, you owe some level of thanks to Andreas Antonopoulos. Like he's been teaching us for free for longer than most people have understood that crypto is a thing. On the other end of the spectrum, like Balaji Srinivasan is a great resource. He's eloquent. I'm not the most eloquent person, so he's eloquent. He's knowledgeable, and he's a great, reliable person. Let's see. If you're more technical or you're interested in more technical things, Jameson Lopp, LOPP, fantastic person to look to. On the technical spectrum, like that, you should start there. Absolutely. In terms of like brands or companies, just like the names that you've heard of are probably trustworthy. So like Coinbase has great educational materials. Abra has great educational materials. Even like companies like Cash App now have great educational materials. So the information is there, and there's no excuse not to like look at it. No matter what industry you are in, expect for technological change to affect how your industry works in the future. Even in healthcare, that is usually 30 years behind, will change because of this shift in technology. Governments and municipalities are run very slowly, but things like having municipal records on a blockchain so that they are accessible and you're not having to pay someone to go look up something and then bring it to you. That change is going to happen where you can just access it online and everything is instantly verifiable. Basically the emphasis was know that this is happening and go learn, please.
Well, originally grocery stores where you walked in, said, "Excuse me, sir, I would like A, B, and C," and the person went behind the counter and got it for you. And they thought it would piss people off if they did it themselves. But no, it's actually quite efficient if you just go do it themselves. And now you can just go click it and put it in your cart on the internet. And eventually maybe you can just go straight to the person who makes it. So do people know who made Bitcoin? Is that a thing? Do people know who made it? I was reading online and they were saying that because I did a little, reading a little bit about everything, but do people really not know who made Bitcoin? Is that a thing?
Yeah. I mean, you can have you can make a deduction, but there's no one knows, and it's a good thing that no one knows. The special thing about Bitcoin is that over the course of the last decade, from a financial point of view, nothing has been better. From like a technological point of view, it's proven so many ideas, like in Austrian economics and around like how money can work, and it's proven that like it can work. I think with like over 99.85% uptime rate, it might be higher. Nothing has had a better uptime rate than Bitcoin blockchain. Like Google, Facebook, your government, it's all failed and stopped at some point, and the Bitcoin blockchain has remained running effectively with the architecture that it was created. So who created it? I don't know. Does it matter? Not really, because it's changed in the last decade. Well, it's been over a decade, but what it proves is that the collective can make something work that doesn't require you to trust any single person or single authority, and doesn't require you to have like any sort of, well, like right now it's still early, so you do need to have some special knowledge, but it doesn't, the interfaces and the technology is becoming such that soon you won't have to have any special knowledge to interact with this cool new technology. You'll just be able to like use it just like you use your Starbucks like reward points, something like that. But I think the future lies in being able to use blockchain and specifically Bitcoin technology just automatically for the masses without actually having to know how it works. But you will reap the benefits because there won't be, depending on what industry you're interacting with, there won't be a bunch of bloating and third parties that are kind of between you and getting the thing you want done.
Makes sense. So I want to be respectful of your time. I know we're coming up to the end. So I think I have four final questions, which in of itself means that they're not final questions. But so you, in our preamble for this, you talked about how you love martial arts, and I think that's such a really cool thing. And so I was curious to hear, what you get from it. What martial arts are you specifically into? And then like, what would you recommend for, someone who hasn't done martial arts? Like how would you recommend they go about feeling out which way is the best way for them? Because there's so many out there they don't know, like jujitsu, who knows? But it depends on the person.
So I guess like in a lot of ways, part of this is self-awareness and part of this is experimentation. So I've trained in Kenpo karate, and it's it's kind of like a specific type of karate, but I've also played with mixed martial arts, and I've done some weapons training. But how did I figure out like what I like? Recently, what I've been getting into is qigong. I know it's not technically like an active martial art. It's a little bit more meditative, but the way that I figure out what I like and what I don't like, if you're listening to this and you're interested in trying something either for personal fitness or just to be active and or try something new, is to just, one, I liked watching videos about different things and be like, oh, this is what this type of martial arts looks like. And then this person is an expert in that field. This is how they talk about it. No, that seems too violent for me. Yes, this looks really interesting. I like the ethos behind this art versus that one. Like Krav Maga, very violent, very different philosophy, compared to something like Shaolin. And, that's very different compared to something like jujitsu or boxing. And depending on your personality and depending on how you like how people talk about those different arts, you might be drawn to one more than the other, but you never really know until you just try it. And a lot of people might like try something and be like, it's not for me. And you might try something and be like, oh, this is kind of cool. I'm not really sure why I like it yet, but it seems interesting, so let me just keep trying it. And eventually you find the benefits depending on what you're looking for. I don't think people should look at martial arts as I think people should just be open to trying martial arts because they aren't looking for a certain thing, but are able to just take it as it comes based off of how it fits their lifestyle and what their personality is like. Because it's not like you're training to fight or anything. Don't look at it from that point of view.
So it sounds like you suggest that people should use their mirror neurons, go on YouTube, kind of cycle through, like, this is what it would feel like if I did this, take those imaginary, basketball shots, and then, kind of see how it would feel with you. Because the cool thing is, if you imagine it, it's like the same, it's like you're doing it. So like activate those mirror neurons and try it out online. And then when it sparks, just go try it out. Most of them are pretty affordable to try out. Like they'll either let you do it free the first time, or it's like $100 or something. Like it's usually a nice deal for new people.
Yeah, I mean, in this day and age, you could learn from people virtually too. In person, obviously, has amazing benefits, but like I've heard of people who were like, oh yeah, I saw this thing in an anime, and then I looked it up, and I was like, oh wait, this is kind of rooted in something real. And then they looked at that and went down the rabbit hole and were like, oh wait, I actually want to learn this for real, like the actual art, and not just like what it was showing in the anime. And then I've heard of other people who are like, oh yeah, I watched a random YouTube video, this looked really cool, or like, it might be there might be something in you. It's like, I want to learn how to have self-defense, or I want to learn how to have discipline. And maybe going to the military isn't for me, but I want to find some way of creating physical discipline. And this art resonates with how I think, and also provides me this level of discipline and self-improvement that I really like. I get joy from. And so there's a lot of ways to do it, and there's no wrong or right way. It's just do what you like based off of what seems interesting to you, but give it a fair chance. Just like anything in life, like allow yourself to really get immersed in something before deciding that you don't want to do it.
Makes sense. So in terms of your company personally, this can really open to the level of vulnerability you want to go here, but what is a problem that you would love help with, that someone listening in can shoot you stuff? I know we talked about a few so far, but this can be anything right now.
I'd say on this, like, most of my time is currently being focused on figuring out like a hybrid model for healthcare. Going back to my incentive for people to give me feedback, like that's something that I need help with. I mean, in a non like day-to-day sense, I've been really like, I've been thinking a lot about just like nature and the like I think it was who was it? It was there was a pre-Socratic philosopher, and I forgot his name, but he said nature loves to hide, or something like that in Greek. And that was referring to something about like how like the laws of our existence really like obscure a lot of the times. And like uncovering those laws is a challenge. And I don't know why they're a challenge, but they are. And it'd be really cool if anybody who's listening has, or even actually, if you might have recommendations. If you have thoughts on how to systematically like uncover those types of like universal laws of our existence and figure out like why things are the way they are. That's something that I've been thinking about recently, and I want help in like figuring out why things are the way they are and how I can learn about them and make them not invisible to me, because it's hard to figure those things out.
Yeah. And is it the all of universe, or is it a specific like area, industry?
Just life in general, I'd say. Like it seems like life is governed by certain rules, and sometimes it feels like it's hard to figure out what those rules are and how they work. But it's possible to figure out what they are, but I have a hard time like figuring out what they are and why and how they work the way that they do, so that I can, like, once you know what the rules are, you can kind of do things that make it easier for things to happen. I know that's the general way of saying it, but
yeah.
Like this is totally different from what we were talking about, mostly because lately they've been on my mind a lot, and I'm trying to make sense of everything. So maybe I'm having a quarter life crisis?
Yeah, you probably live to 100. I don't know, or beyond that.
I hope not. I hope not. I think I'll be done by 85.
I don't know. I don't know what people do when they're past 60. You know, like I'm almost 30, and I'm just like, I don't know. I'm gonna like achieve everything I wanted to achieve by like 32. Like so I have to like invent new things to do. But so I hear you. How to rip off the face of nature and stare into the eyes of God. So that's how to do that. So if anyone knows how, send us an email. I have ideas, but I'm going to answer it in an email because we're short on time. So
yes.
Last thing is, what is a question? Never mind, you just answered it. You just did it. So I'm gonna biff that one. What are some books that you'd recommend people check out? Writers, you name it.
So I like writers that are kind of from the turn of the century, end of the 1800s, early 1900s. And I know you're a fan of like fiction as well, I think. Is that true?
Yeah. I read anything for the most part. I read rom-coms sometimes too.
Oh wow. Okay, yeah. So I think your reading list is a lot more varied than mine. But in the books that make a big impact on me that I wish more people read were Frederick Bastiat's works on economics. If you just look up Frederick Bastiat, I think his works are incredible. They're really formative for how I think about how economics works. I actually dropped out of school for my very first startup, and so learning about how just stuff works kind of depended on me reading from people who had these original ideas. Also, connecting back to the last thing I said, trying to figure out how nature works. I thought James Allen was a really great writer. He like the way that he writes just clicks with my brain. So I'm able to like understand to some degree what's being said, and his works have made a huge impact on me. So like for founders and for like people trying to improve themselves just generally, I think like understanding yourself and creating self-awareness and understanding like how like the value of life and how it works, it comes first before a lot of the like more technical type of books, like how to do this or how to do that. And so like understanding life for me, like books that talk about that are way more impactful. So writers in that space are a lot more impactful. So I say James Allen, Emerson. It's like I haven't gone through all of his essays, but Emerson's essays are fantastic. And I'd say in economics, I'd say Henry Hazlitt and Frederick Bastiat have made a huge impact on me. And I'm still trying to read like their works over and over again so I can understand how Bitcoin works and how it, like why that stuff works.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. So in that vein, I have a recommendation, and then we can wrap up. The Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. I think you love that.
When was it published? Let me look it up.
Most likely post World War II. He wrote it in a concentration camp.
Oh wait, is this? I think you've recommended this book to me.
Yeah, I recommend it
might
to
have
everyone.
already.
Yeah, yeah, check
Oh,
it out
yeah.
though. It's like 100 pages. It's really nice.
Yeah, I think I already purchased it as well. Hold on, let me see. What was the name?
Man's Search for Meaning.
I think you recommended this to me and I ordered it and it's on my list. So currently I'm reading a book from Pierre Hadot. It's about the veil. It's called The Veil of Isis. It's not Isis, the terror group. It's Isis, the goddess.
Mhm.
And so it's referring to just like, again, the theme of nature and uncovering like why nature is opaque. But the book that you've just recommended, I'm pretty sure I ordered it on Amazon. I'll be getting to it soon.
It's
on my
really good.
list.
It's very short, and it really gets to what is the meaning of life. Literally.
And do like this is your number one recommendation?
For what you just said, yes.
Okay. I will. I mean, I'll read it next.
Yeah.
Hopefully, maybe I'll send you my thoughts, and you can tell me if what I got out of it is similar to what you got out of it.
Yeah, we can. Everyone who's read this book, we'll have like a hangout. We'll all come together and we'll have like a book club about it or something. We'll start a Reddit. We'll do something so that everyone can share their thoughts. We can gain insight from each other's perspectives.
That'd be awesome. Yeah.
All right, sweet. So the last thing is kind of a little bit on you. You can leave us with a quote. You can leave us with a thought. You can leave us with your website, www. In which case, I won't do it in our preamble. But it's kind of up to you. What is the last thought you'd like to leave the listeners with? And thank you very much for being on the show. FYI.
Yeah. So I guess just my final thoughts. I don't have anything specific, I don't think, but I want to say thanks to Lowell for having me on. I know I'm not the most, I'm not a doctor. So a lot of the other, if you got on this thinking there was going to be another doctor or another like scientist or academic, I apologize. You had to listen to this. The second thing is I hope something I said was either relatable and useful in that way, or was new information and was useful in that way. That's really all that I was hoping to do here, aside from having a great conversation with Lowell. So if either of those things happened, awesome. Let's celebrate together. Other than that, yeah, like, thanks for listening, guys. Thank you, Lowell, for having me here. This was fun. Yeah, if you have trouble with sleep, look up Sehatu on any platform that you're on, and maybe we can get some help and at least teach you something.
Thank you for joining us today with the Learn with Lowell show. Check us out at learnwithlowell.com. Anywhere podcasts can be found, subscribe. Tell me what you thought of this episode. Check us out on YouTube in particular. It's a new thing I'm doing. Timestamps and links are in the show notes. Thank you for coming, and I hope every one of you found something today that you're curious about to learn more about, and you'll go out and be curious and learn something new. Thank you, and have a great rest of your day.